Welcome to John Gets Games. This is part 3 of my BoardGameGeek.con 2014's impression list. I've already covered 16 games. I'm going to do the final 8 now. So the first of those is Deus. This was right near the top of my most excited about list games to play. It was also the first game that I played at the convention, and it did not disappoint me. I sat down, I played a 4-player game of it, and it was great. It was everything that I was hoping for it to be. If you aren't familiar with it, really briefly, you get a hand of cards, and they have buildings on them with various engine-y effects. You can it might tell you to spend some gold to get some resources, or it might say move this piece over here. It does various things, it gets you lots of resources based on where you have things on the map. And you either play them down, and you always put them into a column of the same color, and when you do that, you get to evaluate every other card you've done in that color. So you're building a little color engine. You want to do certain cards first, and then next ones, and you want to do them in an order, so you evaluate them, you get to do awesome stuff. Also, the other mechanic of the game is you can discard cards from your hand and evaluate, I think 5 different types of, or maybe 6. Anyway, several different types of discard abilities where you might discard cards from your hand and you get money for that, or you discard cards from your hand and you get new cards, or you might get new buildings or resources, like all these different things you can get, which essentially means you might get a bad hand, but that's okay. Ditch the hand, get a bunch of resources, draw new cards, and now you have a bunch of resources to play them. It was exactly as it was advertised. In fact, about halfway, 2/3 way through the game, I was thinking to myself, I'm really enjoying this, but I am not going to win. I had like 9 in-game victory points at the end of the game. You start with 5, so I accrued like 4. I had taken 1 tiny barbarian village, and I had no victory point engine in front of me. Whereas the other players, a couple of them were at like 24, 26 points, and I was like, there's no way I'm going to win. However, I was able to get 3 of the endgame scoring temples built, whereas one of the player got 2 and the other people just got 1. And I ended up winning. I was really surprised by like at least 5 or 6 points. I was very happy to see that I went for, well, I wasn't necessarily going for a low victory point strategy. Didn't have the option to build a victory point engine. Instead, I did other things, and it was still very viable. I came back with victory points, and I won. Really, really loved the game. Game 2 is Abyss. This is another game that I talked about in John Gets Excited that I was super excited to play. It's one of those games where you have some push your luck, but the way you push your luck is you don't bust in this game. It's more like you don't want to present great opportunities for your opponents to get really good cards. You got it's set collection, and you spend those cards to get engine buildy kind of victory point lords, and you get them for a little while and you get victory points. But the main mechanic of the game is you're kind of making decisions based on around how many good opportunities you want to give to your opponents. And this game totally worked for me. It had a lot of hype, and then a lot of people were disappointed because they thought there should be more to it. And I went in thinking it would be exactly what it was and hoping it would be exactly what it was, and I was very happy with what it was. I ended up playing twice. I lost the first game terribly. I won the first game. I won the second game, and I will definitely be picking this up. It's gorgeous. The only flaw with the game is that monster track. There are these monster cards where when you play them, this track goes up, and the higher up on the track you go, the better rewards there are for the person who cashes out. But there are so few monster cards in the deck, and the rewards you get on the bottom of the track are so good that we never saw it go past the 3rd out of like 6 or 7 slots on that monster track. I feel like something is up with that. I've seen lots of people online have the same critique. Part of me wants to just take the monsters out of the deck and get rid of that and just play the game without it. I feel like it might feel a little more cohesive at that point, or some variant. Either way, I like the game as it is. Just one weird mechanic that it doesn't seem to be playing out the way I think the designer expected it to when he released it. The third game is Pandemic the Cure. This is essentially Pandemic the dice game. In it, every single player has a unique role, and they have a unique set of dice for that role, and you can roll them as many times as you want to on your turn. However, there's a push your luck method, because if you get a certain die face, it's going to push up your epidemic track, which means you're going to roll more disease dice, which means you're going to die faster. And we died fast. I played this game twice. We didn't get past curing 1 disease in either of those games before we got overrun by outbreaks. This game is very difficult. Now, part of that is because we started on the standard difficulty instead of intro. I think we're a little full of ourselves. We thought we're at a board gaming convention, we should start at standard. That was wrong. Everybody start with intro. Beat it a couple times, and then maybe work into standard once you have an idea what the mid to late game is like, because we didn't even get to that point. It was a very difficult game, and I think it's supposed to be difficult by design, and that's fine. You want a cooperative game to not be to be too easy, but it's also a dice game. So we had some very bad rolls. We had a couple times where someone would just roll 2 to 3 of the biohazard symbols on the first roll, so they pretty much don't have a turn because most of the dice were already locked out. And then we have another epidemic happened and things shifted down very quickly. And I think that's going to happen in a game with dice. And the people around the table who disliked it, I think, were disposed to disliking it because they're not a huge fan of dice. I enjoyed it. I like dice. Another one, people at the table doesn't like dice but likes co-ops, and he liked it. So I think I'm going to acquire it and try to beat it on the intro level. And yeah, I think I won it. I was just a little bit of a downer how incredibly difficult, how not even close we got to beating this game in either of the times we played. Game 4 is Nations the Dice Game, and this is one of the many The Dice Game games that were at BGG.con. I've already talked about several of them. And this takes a sprawling, epic civilization game that lasts like 45 minutes a player into a small distilled dice game that lasts about 45 minutes for 4 players total. And it does a very good job of getting the nation's vibe into this game. Like you have the book track that's just the same as in the other game, and you got military and you're trying to get food to go over famines, and the way you draft the tiles, much like the cards, worked very similar. I felt like I was playing Nations Light, and that's a good thing. That's what the game was going for, and I really enjoyed playing it. You roll your dice, and then you spend dice to buy tiles, and those tiles have new dice on them, so you get rid of those other dice and you get better dice. So you start with white dice, and then you might get blue dice that have lots of ore, or yellow dice that have lots of gold on them. And you can kind of specialize an engine. The ore lets you build monuments, the gold lets you buy new cards, and that's really great. You're building an engine while you go, you roll them immediately, you get to use them immediately. The only problem I have with the game is that there is a very small amount of diversity in the tiles that you actually buy. They might all look different, like this tile right here might say it's the apothecary or something, and this tile right here might say it's the aqueduct, but both of them might cost the same amount of money based on where they are on the board, but they both just get you a blue die. They're functionally identical, even though they have different art and a different name. It seemed like when you put all the tiles out on the board, I was kind of waiting for that, ooh, wow, that one's great, ooh, that one's really interesting, and ultimately they're all just get a better die, get a better die. You're upgrading your dice pool without much variety. So I feel like this game is not going to have as much replayability as I want, which is probably why I'm not going to rush out to get it. I feel like after 3 or 4 games, you're going to feel like you've done everything. You've seen every tile. You pretty much see every tile in the first game anyway, because there's so many duplicates functionality-wise. And I think that if this game comes out with expansion, which I hope it does well enough, and I hope it does come out with an expansion, I'll be all over that. The expansion brings in new tiles that maybe have an interesting ability on them in addition to getting a dice, or just doesn't get you a dice, just has abilities, then I will get that guaranteed, because the mechanics of this game are solid. I really like them. I just wanted more diversity in the options that I'm going to have. So for now, I'm holding off. I'm very glad I played it. I hope to play it again soon, but it probably won't be from my collection. Game 5 is Sellswords, and this is one I had no idea existed until I was wandering around the demo hall and I got to the level 99 games booth, and I was chatting with them, with my friend, about Argent Consortium a bit, and then I looked over and there was this very small table, like, maybe like this big, and there was this little game on it with these square cards with numbers on each of the sides and the little graphic on the middle. And I walked over and I said, wow, this game looks a lot like that card mini game that you play in, was it Final Fantasy X or several of the Final Fantasy games. And I remember loving it in the video game, the Final Fantasy video game. And the guy said, yeah, that's exactly pretty much what this game is. It's a tile laying game. They're cards, but they're square tiles with a number in each side, and you place them down on the board. They have a red side and a blue side. You're trying to get the most of your color out there, and when you compare the 2 cards, the one with the number that's greater is going to flip the other one over, and now you have more control. And every single card has, except for one, I guess, every single card has a special ability that does all sorts of things. It might flip this one over there, it might move this one around here, it might shift that, it might rotate all of these around. And I only played a demo at the convention, but I've now played a game of it subsequently, and it really worked well. As a disclaimer, they noticed that I was a board game reviewer, and they gave this game to me for free as a review copy. So that was super cool. It's one of the first times it's ever happened to me. But I also enjoyed the game. I wanted to. It felt like, if you've heard of Equinox, which is a game by Asmodee Games that came out recently, and it is excellent, this was like Equinox Light, because Equinox is like a real brain burner. It's so awesome with hexagons, and you're flipping tiles, and there's all these very intricate combinations. And this game is just simple, light, and fun. I look forward to playing it a bunch more. Unfortunately, the text on the cards can be very vague, and then you look to the rules and they have explanations of every card, and even that can seem to be pretty vague. It seemed like maybe they needed a little bit more editing to make those more concise and more obvious as to what exactly some of the more complicated cards do. But at the end of the day, it's a very neat game. It's a very small box, and I look forward to playing this one more. Game 6 is Spellcaster, which is a game I was looking for at the convention. I was interested to see how it played. I wasn't necessarily excited about it because it seems very light. So I got to sit down and play it at the booth, play a full game because it's very quick. And the way it works is you have, it's a 2-player only game between 2 mages, and you have health and you have victory points, essentially. They have different words for it in the game. And you either win by getting to a certain number of victory points before your opponent, or you remove all the health from your opponent. And there are 4 different colored magics in the game, and you have a hand of cards. You play them down to a communal board, like if it's a green card, you put it in the green card slot, and then you can activate it, and it might attack them or give you a buff. And on their turn, if they play a green card, it will cover up your green card, and it'll be facing them, and then they can use it. So you kind of build a little public tableau engine, but you only get to use the cards that are facing you, and your opponent has a way of destroying that engine by just covering it up with a card that might be good for them. This game was very quick. I got destroyed. I got completely slaughtered because the guy at the demo booth has probably played this a bunch. And I could see a game in there. I could see playing this more. Unfortunately, I don't think it's necessarily my type of game. It is so fast. And I just don't have that much room in my collection for more very fast 2-player games that I don't know how much depth it's going to have. I kind of wish I'd played it a couple more times to get a feel for it, to see some more of the combos. It was an interesting experience. I wouldn't mind playing it again at some point, but for the moment, it might fill an order to get to free shipping at some point, but it's not going to be one of the reasons I make a purchase order at some point in the future. Game 7 is Argent the Consortium. This is another game by Level 99 Games, and I actually backed this on Kickstarter, so I'll be getting it relatively soon. A friend of mine who I went to BoardGameGeek.con was very interested in playing this game. Like, he saw it online, he was really, really excited to play it. I told him I was getting it, and he still really wanted to play it at the convention, so I figured, why not? So we got it out, and we put it out on the table, and this game is humongous. We played a 3-player game, and it took the entire table. It was incredible how much space this worker placement game has, and like many Level 99 games, it has an incredible amount of replayability because there's so much stuff in the box. You're only using this much of this and this much of that. We use the intro beginner setup to play the game, and you are all mages at an academy. You have a certain number of workers. It's a worker placement game, but every worker has a special attribute. Like, some can be placed as a double move. Some come out when you cast a certain spell. Others, when you place them, they can wound another one. They can kick it off and go to the infirmary. Another one is immune from being kicked off. And on top of that, then you get spells, which have several levels on them, and you can upgrade them, and you spend mana to activate the spells. And then you are getting influence. It's going to break ties, and you're getting mana, and you're getting money, and the money lets you buy artifacts, and the artifacts are either immediate use, or you can keep using them. And then you could also get followers who can let you do all this other things, like get different things. They might be one-time use. They might keep going. And if it sounds like there's a lot going on, it's because there is a lot going on. And ultimately, the way you win the game is you're trying to win the votes of these I guess, voters, people who will see how well you did at various things, and you will get the card for it. So the person who gets the most influence gets this card. The person who has the most gold in the game gets that card. The person with the most followers in blue or something like that gets this card. And most of those voting cards are face down at the beginning of the game. So one of the actions you're doing in the game is to look at these cards and put it down and put a little token on it and say, I've seen it, I can look at it later. And one of them gives you most points for seeing most of those. So it has this weird effect where you're playing the game, you have so much you can do, and you're not even sure what you're supposed to be doing. And ultimately, it fell flat for all 3 of us. We really wanted to like this game. We started playing the first turn, we're like, this is so cool. There's so much going on. I've never played a worker placement game with this many things that you can do, and they all seem neat, and you got the spell that lets you blow things up, and you got this spell that does this, and I got an epic spell that let me do other things. But ultimately, once we got a couple turns in, it felt like, well, first of all, one of my friends made a ridiculous combo, and he just destroyed us. Like, between his spell and the certain mages that he had, he was able to dump almost all of his mages out on the first or second turn, and then he just tried to end the round as quickly as possible, leaving myself and the other player with pieces that were stranded. And to the best of my knowledge, we did no rules incorrectly. He just had an astonishingly good combo with slow time and these black mages, and it was very good. But also, I just felt like, I'm not sure what I want to do with this mage, because I've only seen 3 out of the 10 victory point conditions for the end of the game. And I know what those are. I know one of them I'm not going to win at all because I'm already like 5 marks behind somebody else, and these other 2 are really public. And so I found myself just doing kind of almost random things, like hopefully one of them have the most gold, and then I didn't even have the most gold. So I feel like if that voting rule thing was not in the game, if you just got victory points for doing various things, and whoever had the most victory points won the game was the game, I think I would like this game way more, because I loved the combos and I loved having tons of stuff to do, but that extra layer of not knowing what I should do, and oftentimes having a hard time getting into the position to even look at the cards to see. And one of the players was able to see like 8 of the 10 cards, and she was overwhelmed by all the knowledge of all the things that she saw. And she said, she's like, you pretty much get, there's pretty much one for doing everything in this game. And I don't know, maybe if we went down to like 6 instead of 10, or 4 instead of 10, and that wasn't the only endgame victory point thing, I just feel like something was missing here. There's just too many things going on. They needed to pull one of these things out to make this game great. And as it stands, I think it's okay. I'm gonna get it in the backer. We've already talked about various variants we're gonna play because we all want to like it so much, and we will try it again when I get it. But it was underwhelming, unfortunately. And the final game of all of these impressions is really goofy. I just had to throw it in here. It's called Whacky Wit, and it is essentially Pac-Man, the board game. It's 2-player only. One person plays the ghosts, one person plays Pac-Man. It was in the middle of the gaming hall. My friend and I ended up playing it while we were waiting for somebody else. The rules are printed right on the board. And I played Pac-Man, he played the ghosts. I won very easily, actually, but we still enjoyed playing it. You roll a d12, it lets the Pac-Man person move that many spots, and you poke these little magnetic pegs down, so you really feel like you're like, you're like eating little white things. And then the ghost player's rolling the dice and tells them which ghosts can move and how far they can move. But it felt really random. You're rolling these d12s. The ghosts can only get out of the pen on certain numbers. It took like 6 turns for him to get any ghosts out. He just got really unlucky. And in a game where you're rolling d12, it's essentially a roll and move game. Luck is gonna play a really big part, but that doesn't change the fact that, I don't know, we both were laughing. We both thought it was great. You get a little yellow pill and suddenly I could eat some of his ghosts and they went back. It really came together well. It looks like it's expensive. I will definitely not be buying this game, but if I see it at BGG.con next year, I wouldn't be surprised if I end up playing it once or twice. And that wraps up my first impressions on 24 games that I played at BGG.con 2014. I played more than that, but believe it or not, I actually distilled down a bit to get to this list. I had an amazing time at this convention. I look forward to going back next year. It was phenomenal to play just games for 15, 17 hours straight. I felt like I was in this la-la land where sleep and food didn't really make sense, and the only thing that mattered was games. It's good to be back in reality. It's great to think about my feelings on these games in retrospect, and I look forward to adding several of them to my collection. I hope you enjoyed these videos. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching.